Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission here, as always, is to take these, well, sometimes really complex ideas, stacks of research,
Years worth sometimes.
exactly, years worth, and boil them down, distill them into a framework that's functional, something you can grasp quickly and really use.
Not just a surface skim, but a real informed understanding.
Right. And today, wow, we're diving into a prophetic framework that's, well, it's ambitious.
That's putting it mildly. It tries to knit together everything from Genesis, tribal blessings, constellations, all the way to Revelation.
It's huge. And the main goal seems to be resolving those long-standing arguments, about end times timing, pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib.
This system claims to have the answer, unifying it all.
So we're talking a 14-year timeline, not 7. 3 different comings of Christ after the initial escape, the 12 tribes.
And mapping it all into the actual geography of Jerusalem around the Temple Mount, it's intricate stuff.
It really is. So our goal today, clarity. We want to lay out the basic structure, the architecture of this system so you can see how the pieces fit.
If you get the framework, the details start making a lot more sense. It's about simplifying it.
Then the absolute key, according to the sources we're looking at, is how we read the Gospels, specifically Matthew, Mark, and Luke.
Yeah, this is the radical part. The claim is the differences between them aren't just, different perspectives or audiences in the first century.
He's saying it's prophetic.
100% prophetic, aimed at 3 different groups of people, living through 3 distinct end-time periods.
That is a fundamental shift.
It really is. It reframes the whole debate. Instead of asking when the rapture is, it asks who is being raptured. Which group are you reading about?
And that defines the timing and the gospel associated with it.
Precisely. It simplifies the picture, suggesting all those timings might be correct just for different people.
Okay, let's unpack this foundational framework first. Let's talk about that timeline, the 14 years, and how the gospels line up with the groups. Okay, so traditionally, everyone talks about the final 7 years, Daniel's 70th week. How does this material get to 14? That's double.
It is a big jump. And it hinges on splitting the tribulation based on who the judgment is for. It's not one single 7-year period for everyone.
Okay.
The framework argues it's 2 distinct consecutive 7-year periods. The first 7 years are called the seals.
The seals from Revelation.
Right. And the sources say this period is the tribulation aimed at the, quote, sleeping church, often linked to the house of Israel, which crucially includes Gentiles grafted in.
So not primarily the Jewish people at this stage.
Not primarily, no. The judgment during the seals is seen more as corrective, preparatory maybe, designed to wake up that sleeping group.
Makes sense. Judgments on the earth, systems breaking down, things to get people's attention.
Exactly. Things that drive people towards repentance, hopefully. Now, immediately after those 7 years of seals finished,
Then comes the second half.
then you get 7 years of trumpets. And this period, the sources are clear, is the intense tribulation aimed primarily at the house of Judah, the Jewish people who are still there, right to the end.
So the focus shifts dramatically.
Completely. This is where you see the full strength of God's wrath being poured out, specifically focusing on Israel and Jerusalem. Much more intense.
Okay, so seals for the sleeping, church grafted in Gentiles for 7 years. Then trumpets for the house of Judah, second 7 years. That gives us the 14.
That's the core timeline. But there's also that bit before the 14 years even start.
Right, you mentioned something above.
Yes, a 50-day period. The source calls it the above period. It starts with what people usually call the pre-tribulation rapture.
Yeah.
But here it's framed more as a vanishing, an escape.
The taking of the bride of Christ.
Exactly, like Enoch, who just walked with God and was gone. That vanishing kicks off the 50 days. It's followed by a 7-day wedding feast in heaven.
Okay.
And then the Son of Man returns to earth for the remaining 40 days of that 50-day window.
Returns. But the seals haven't started yet?
Correct. This 40-day return is specifically for a final, powerful warning, like Jonah going to Nineveh for 40 days, a last chance call before the seals begin.
Wow. Okay, so 50 days total. Escape, 7-day wedding, 40-day warning return.
And crucially, this whole 50-day sequence, this initial phase, is tied prophetically only to the Gospel of Luke.
Only Luke.
According to this framework, yes. Luke describes the group and the events relevant to this pre-trib, pre-seals period.
Which leads to that order reversal you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. We read the Matthew, Mark, Luke. But prophetically, for the end times, the order is Luke, Mark, Matthew.
The first will be last, the last will be first.
That's the principle they apply.
Yep.
Luke covers the first group to be redeemed or escape. Matthew covers the very last group who endure to the end. Mark is the middle. Hashtag 1.2, who the Gospels are speaking to.
Okay, let's break down these three groups then. Starting with Luke, the first one. Who exactly is this group?
Luke's Gospel, in this view, speaks to the bride of Christ. This isn't just anyone who believes. It's described as the diligent, watchful, repentant, spirit-filled group. The first fruits.
The ones who are truly ready.
Yes. Their whole mandate is intense preparation, watching, praying, being ready so they qualify for that escape before the main 14 years start. Their timing is that 50-day above window.
And you mentioned specific instructions in Luke.
Absolutely. The sources highlight Luke 21.36. Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man.
The key word there is escape. Not endure, but escape.
Precisely. It's a promise of avoidance for those found worthy. Symbolically, they're linked to the pure, white, gorgeous robe, representing righteousness, purity, being fully prepared.
Okay, that's the Luke group, the bride. What about the next group, the one Mark addresses? They don't escape.
No, they don't. Mark's group is the sleeping church, or the house of Israel, including those Gentiles grafted in who, well, weren't quite as diligent. They didn't meet the criteria for the bride's escape.
So they have to go through the first part of the tribulation.
Yes, they endure the 7 years of seals judgments. Mark's gospel is seen as guiding them through that period of trial and suffering. It speaks to their experience.
And their redemption comes later, not pre-trib.
Right. The redemption point is what's often called the great multitude rapture.
The one in Revelation 7, a great multitude which no man could number.
That's the one. It happens, according to this framework, in the mid-tribulation period, specifically around the end of the 6th year of the seals, heading into the 7th.
So technically midway through the full 14 years, but at the end of the seals period?
Exactly. And Revelation explicitly says they come out of great tribulation. This is presented as a totally distinct event from Luke's pre-trib vanishing.
And their symbol.
The purple robe. It signifies royalty, priesthood, but perhaps slightly stained, less pure than the bride's white robe. It reflects their status, having needed to go through the purification of the seals.
Okay, Luke pre-trib, Mark mid-trib end of seals. That leaves Matthew.
Matthew is the gospel for the house of Judah, primarily the Jewish people. They are the group that endures all the way through the final 7 years, the trumpet judgments.
The really intense period?
The most intense. Matthew's Olivet Discourse, talks heavily about the signs, the abomination of desolation, fleeing to the mountains, and critically, he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved.
Endurance is the key theme there.
Absolutely. Theirs is not an escape narrative. It's a survival and endurance narrative until the very final return of the Lord.
Which is the big, final, physical return.
Yes. Feet down on the Mount of Olives. Matthew 24 describes it happening immediately after the tribulation of those days. The sun darkened, moon not giving light. It's the end of the trumpets, the end of the 14 years.
Their symbol.
The scarlet robe, representing martyrdom, suffering, the blood shed during those final trumpet judgments. It's through that intense fire they are purified, right before the millennium begins.
Putting it like that, it really does simplify things. It takes these three big theological camps, pre, mid, post, that often seem contradictory.
And it says, well, maybe they're all right. They just apply to different groups, described in different gospels, happening at different times within this larger 14-year structure.
Luke is pre-trib escape and the initial warning. Mark is the seals tribulation and the mid-trib rescue. Matthew is the trumpet tribulation and the final post-trib salvation.
It creates one cohesive story, start to finish, which is a pretty powerful claim for simplifying prophecy.
Okay, we have the timeline, the groups, the gospels. Now let's connect this to the ground. How does this whole system get anchored physically in Jerusalem? The tribes, the directions, that's the next layer.
Right. This is where it gets, I think, really fascinating. The core idea here is that the three main prophetic comings of Christ after that initial wedding period.
So not the initial vanishing, but the subsequent returns or appearances.
Exactly. Those three events align perfectly with three specific tribes, the ones Balaam gave specific blessings to, and those tribes correspond to three main directions around the Temple Mount.
Southwest, east.
Southwest and east. And it mirrors the way the tribes were set up in the wilderness encampment around the tabernacle. The whole layout seems prophetically significant.
That's a level of detail that's pretty stunning if it holds up. Let's start with the first coming after the wedding, that 40-day warning period we talked about, tied to Luke.
Okay, so this is the Son of Man returning to earth right after the 7-day heavenly wedding feast. He comes back to begin that 40-day mission.
The Jonah-style warning.
Exactly. A period of intense, last-chance evangelism and calling people to repent before the seals really get going. This event is associated with the south direction and the tribe of Reuben.
Reuben. Why Reuben specifically? His name means behold, son, right?
It does. And his tribal typology, or symbol, is the man, often depicted with a pitcher of water. Think Aquarius.
Ah, the water bearer.
Right. And Balaam's prophecy specifically said Reuben's descendants would, quote, pour the water out of his buckets. There's a strong water connection.
Okay, water. But how does that link to the timing or the event itself?
Water often symbolizes spirit and cleansing, but here it also connects to the harvest. Remember in John 4, the disciples say there are still 4 months until harvest.
And Jesus says, look, the fields are white now.
Exactly. The source connects this 40-day period to that idea of the spiritual wheat harvest happening supernaturally fast, 4 months early. It's a rapid gathering for those who remain, the remnant workers from the Lucian group.
And you also mentioned the almond tree.
Yes, Jeremiah 1, the blossoming almond rod. The almond tree is the first to blossom, symbolizing watching and readiness, quick action. It fits the urgency of this 40-day warning.
So typology fits. What about the physical Temple Mount connection, the south side?
This is pretty concrete. On the south side of the Temple Mount stood the royal stoa, a massive structure. But critically, archaeologists have found dozens and dozens of mikvot there.
Ritual cleansing pools.
Exactly. Huge numbers of them, used for ritual purification before entering the temple complex. This firmly links the south direction with water, purification, baptism.
And spiritual readiness.
And the source connects it to a kind of Acts 2.0 anointing of the Holy Spirit, empowering that remnant group, the ones who stayed behind after the bride's escape, giving them the strength they need for those 40 days and the coming seals.
Like Noah's flood, 40 days of water bringing purification and saving a remnant.
It echoes that typology, yes. South is the starting point, the place of cleansing and empowerment for service.
Okay, south is the first coming, the warning, linked to Reuben and water. What about the second coming, the mid-trib one for Mark's group?
The second major event is that mid-trib great multitude rapture we discussed. Happening around the end of the 6th year of seals, this one is tied to the west direction and the tribe of Ephraim.
Ephraim, part of the house of Joseph. Why Ephraim out of the tribes on the west?
Ephraim's symbol is the ox, sometimes the unicorn representing strength, service, sacrifice. He's often linked typologically with Messiah ben Joseph, the suffering servant aspect of the Messiah.
Okay.
But this coming isn't just about suffering. It's about the Lord arriving in power as both high priest and king. Like Joshua Yeshua, same name, who led Israel across the Jordan into the Promised Land after their wilderness trials. It's a redemptive arrival.
Leading them into their inheritance and what happens right when this coming occurs.
The sources link this moment directly to the destruction of the beast's initial power structure, the 10 kings confederacy in the war, described in Ezekiel 39. It's a major turning point.
And the Lord comes with something.
Yes, crucially, he comes with heavenly Mount Zion. This isn't just him appearing, it's the arrival of the place prepared for that great multitude.
Ah, connecting to Revelation 6.
Exactly. Where the kings of the earth are terrified, crying for the mountains and rocks to fall on them. Why? Because they are seeing the arrival of this immense heavenly reality, the place where the redeemed are being gathered.
It explains the worldwide panic described there, and geographically, the West.
Mount Zion, the actual physical hill in Jerusalem, is located just west of the Temple Mount complex.
Okay, that's direct.
It's a direct geographical marker. The Lord comes with heavenly Mount Zion to gather the multitude, and the physical Mount Zion sits to the west. Plus, in the traditional camp layout, Ephraim's banner, the ox, faced west. It all lines up directionally.
South for the warning, Reuben man. West for the mid-trib rescue, Reefer ox. That leaves the final big return, east.
This is the third and final coming discussed in this framework, the one tied to Matthew's gospel, the group that endures the trumpets. It happens, as Matthew says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, end of the 14th year.
And this is linked to the east and the tribe of Judah.
Yes, and Judah's typology is probably the most famous, the lion of the tribe of Judah. This coming is purely about the conquering king and warrior.
No more warning, no more rescue, just judgment.
Judgment and establishment of the kingdom. Revelation 19 describes him with garments dipped in blood, treading the winepress of the fierce wrath of Almighty God. Zechariah 14 talks about all nations gathering against Jerusalem and the Lord going forth to fight them. This is that final battle.
And the geography of the east is undeniable.
Absolutely. The Mount of Olives is directly east of the Temple Mount, and Zechariah 14:4 states it plainly, "And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east."
It splits in two. It's a massive, earth-changing event.
It is. And there's a subtle detail in Matthew's Gospel that the sources use to lock this connection down.
What's that?
It's about the triumphal entry. When Jesus rides into Jerusalem before the crucifixion, all Gospels mention the colt or the ass. But only Matthew's Gospel, the one for Judah, explicitly mentions both the ass and the colt together.
Why is that significant?
The source argues this duality connects directly to Jacob's blessing on Judah back in Genesis 49, which mentions binding his foal to the vine and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. It's seen as a specific prophetic marker linking the fullness of Judah's kingship, represented by both animals, uniquely to Matthew's account, and thus to this final Eastern coming.
Wow, that's specific. So, okay, here's where it gets really interesting, as you said.
Right.
That simplification emerges again.
Right.
The three redemptive comings, Man, Water, South Reuben, Ox, West Ephraim, Lion, East Judah, perfectly map onto the three time periods and the three Gospels, Luke, Mark, Matthew.
It takes all these disparate pieces, tribes, directions, prophecies, gospel accounts, timings, and weaves them into one single, geographically anchored narrative for the entire 14 years. It's incredibly cohesive.
Well, we've only covered three directions. What about the north? Right, the compass isn't complete. South, west, east have these redemptive comings of the Lord. But the north, it's different in this framework, isn't it?
Very different. The North is unique because it's explicitly not associated with a coming of the Lord for redemption or rescue. Instead, the North represents judgment and also the source of corruption that necessitates judgment.
Okay, judgment. And the tribe associated with the north is Dan.
Yes, Dan, whose name literally means judge. So the meaning fits the theme.
But Dan has that tricky symbolism, doesn't he? Judge, yes, but also the serpent. Dan shall be a serpent, by the way.
Exactly. That duality is key. The bad side of Dan, the serpent aspect, is linked geographically to the source of the trouble. Think Mount Hermon, way up north of Israel.
Mount Hermon. That's where the Book of Enoch says the fallen angels came down.
That's the tradition, yes. The place where corruption entered the earth in a major way. And Jeremiah 1 explicitly prophesies, "Out of the north an evil shall break forth upon all the inhabitants of the land."
So the north is directionally where the opposition, the evil, originates from, both historically and prophetically.
That's how the framework presents it. It's the direction from which the invading forces often came historically, and it represents the origin point of the spiritual darkness that leads to the final judgments, like Satan being cast down mid-trumpets, enabling the beast to rise.
Okay, so north is judgment, origin of the problem. But you mentioned a good side of Dan. How does that fit with the 144,000?
Ah, yes. The 144,000, they are central to the trumpet period, the second 7 years. The connection to Dan here is subtle, but, the source argues, crucial for understanding who they are.
Especially since Dan is famously missing from the list of the 12 tribes that are sealed in Revelation 7. Joseph Manasseh is there, Levi isn't listed as sealed either, but Dan is conspicuously absent.
Right. And the explanation offered is based on the role of the 144,000 and historical precedent with the Levites. The 144,000 are identified as the first fruits from all the tribes chosen during the tribulation.
Okay, the first fruits to be what?
To be the new priestly line for the kingdom age. They're destined to function as the judges and ministers, essentially taking over the role previously held by the Levites.
Replacing the Levites. Why?
Go back to the wilderness. God's original plan, before the golden calf incident, was for the firstborn son of every tribe to serve as the priests.
Ah, I remember that, but they failed.
They failed. So God chose the tribe of Levi instead. And importantly, the Levites were not numbered along with the other 12 tribes when counting for military purposes or land inheritance. They were the unnumbered tribe set apart for priestly and judicial service. The Lord was their inheritance.
Okay, so the 144,000 are like a restoration of that original plan. Firstborns from all tribes serving.
Exactly. They are the new, redeemed, uncorrupted firstborns, fulfilling that priestly judicial role. And because their primary function during the trumpet period is judging, they are seen on Mount Zion with the Lamb in Revelation 14, a place of judgment and rule. They are gathered prophetically under the banner of Dan the judge.
So that's why Dan isn't listed among the sealed 12 tribes in Revelation 7, because Dan functionally represents the entire group of 144,000 priests judges who, like the Levites before them, are unnumbered in that specific context.
That's the argument. Dan isn't missing. The name Dan represents the office or function of this entire special group, the new unnumbered priestly tribe.
Wow, that ties that loose end up neatly. The tribe of Dan itself isn't eliminated. They get land in Ezekiel 48 later, but the name takes on this larger symbolic meaning during the trumpets.
Precisely, and their timing fits perfectly. They are sealed right at the end of the 6th year of seals, just as the great multitude is raptured, end of Mark's period. They then begin their ministry as judges and priests throughout the 7 years of trumpets, Matthew's period.
Standing on Mount Zion, the place of the second coming, west, now functioning as judges under the banner of Dan, North Judge.
It completes the picture. South, west, east are redemptive comings. North is the place of judgment and the banner of the judges who administer it. The whole compass is filled.
Okay, that's the complete framework. Timeline, gospels, groups, directions, tribes, comings, and the role of the North Dan 144K. Now, to really make this stick, let's look at some of those specific little proof points the sources use, the aha moments that click into place within this structure, right? Sometimes it's the small details that really convince you a framework holds water. We talked about Luke's group needing to be prepared. Let's start with that instruction about the loin belt.
Yeah, the source material puts a lot of emphasis on the armor of God in Ephesians 6, and specifically the very first piece mentioned. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth. The loin belt or girdle.
Why so much focus on the belt?
Because in Roman armor, the belt, the cingulum, was foundational. It held the tunic up, it often had strips hanging down for protection, it helped secure the breastplate, and crucially, it was where the sword hung. It was the anchor point for everything else.
Symbolizing truth, the word of God, holding everything together. Makes sense.
Exactly. And the specific action phrase, gird up your loins, which sounds a bit old-fashioned to us.
Means get ready for action, right? Lift up your robes so you can move fast.
Precisely. It was a command for immediate readiness. Now, here's the kicker. That specific instruction, have your loins girded about, using that particular Greek construction, Strong's G4024, perizon numi, where does it primarily appear in the context of end times readiness?
Let me guess.
Predominantly in Luke 12.35, and also in 1 Peter 1.13, which is often seen as echoing Luke's message. It's noticeably absent in the parallel passages in Matthew and Mark when they discuss being ready.
And the context in Luke 12 confirms it's for that first group.
Absolutely perfectly. Luke 12.3536 says, Let your loins be girded about and your lights burning, and ye yourselves like unto men that wait for their Lord, when he will return from the wedding, that when he cometh and knocketh, they may open unto him immediately.
Wow. It explicitly mentions waiting for the return from the wedding and needing immediate readiness.
It's directed squarely at that remnant worker group, the ones chosen from the bride who remain on earth during the 40-day warning period after the 7-day wedding. They have to be instantly ready for service the moment the Lord knocks.
So the loin belt truth, core readiness, is the primary instruction for the very first group, the Lukean remnant, preparing them for either escape or immediate service during that critical 40-day window.
It locks Luke's gospel and that specific instruction directly to the pre-tribulary warning phase. It also echoes Jeremiah being told to gird up his loins to stand strong against the corruption coming from the north. It's about being a fortress of truth right from the start.
That's a solid connection. Okay, let's jump to the other end of the timeline, Matthew's period, the trumpets, the judgment on Judah. You mentioned something about strange apparel. Hashtag 4.2, the strange apparel and Purim condemnation.
Yes, this is another one of those details that seems obscure until you place it in the right context. The prophet Zephaniah, in chapter 1, delivers a harsh prophecy of judgment the day of the Lord.
Okay.
And in verse 8, God says, He will punish the princes, the king's children, and all such as are clothed with strange apparel. Then verse 9 condemns all those that leap on the threshold.
Strange apparel. Leaping on thresholds. Read on its own, it could mean almost anything. Foreign clothes, some weird ritual.
Exactly, it seems vague. But this prophetic framework insists Zephaniah is focused squarely on the judgment coming upon the house of Judah during the final trumpet period.
So applying it specifically to Jewish customs of that time.
Yes, and when you do that, the source argues, the strange apparel and leaping on the threshold point directly and unmistakably to the Jewish festival of Purim.
Purim, the Feast of Esther.
Think about how Purim is celebrated, especially in more traditional or communal settings. People dress up in costumes, sometimes quite elaborate or silly. You could definitely call it strange apparel. Colloquially, maybe like a Jewish Halloween in terms of dressing up.
Okay, the costumes fit strange apparel. What about leaping on the threshold?
A major custom during Purim is delivering gifts of food mishlochmanot, to friends and neighbors. This involves going from house to house, knocking on doors, stepping inside, literally crossing or leaping on the threshold repeatedly throughout the day.
Ah, that's very specific.
It is, and Purim celebrations, historically and sometimes today, can involve a fair amount of public revelry and drinking, which aligns with other condemnations about drunkenness found near these passages.
So the argument is this isn't just generic condemnation. It's Zephaniah pointing to specific, unique practices within Judah costumes and threshold crossing associated with Purim as things that will be under judgment when the day of the Lord arrives during that final Mattheamin period.
Exactly. It takes the vagueness away and makes it a laser-focused prophecy against Judah's practices, confirming the target audience, Judah Matthew, and the timing, trumpet's final judgment. It shows God is aware of the specific details of their lives.
That's another compelling aha moment. Okay, one more to reinforce the timeline's duality, Noah. How does Noah fit into both the beginning and the end? Hashtag 4.3, Noah's duality, and the wedding feast.
The story of Noah and the ark is used powerfully to illustrate the difference between Luke's beginning phase and Matthew's ending phase. It contains a dual prophecy.
Okay, how does Luke use Noah?
Luke 17 talks about the days of Noah, focusing on the normality right before the flood, eating, drinking, marrying, until Noah entered the ark and then the flood came. The emphasis is on the entering, the escape before the judgment hits.
So Luke's Noah represents the bride being taken safely into the ark, like Enoch vanishing just before the 7-day wedding period begins, and the judgment, the flood seals, starts on the world left behind.
Precisely. It's the escape narrative. And the sources link this directly to the wedding banquet parable in Luke 14.
Where the host tells the guest, "Friend, go up higher."
Yes. That invitation to go up higher is seen as symbolizing the pre-trib rapture escape. And it also connects to the idea of the Lord having a special banquet meal with that remnant worker group when he returns on the 8th day after the 7-day wedding. Luke's focus is removal before judgment and the subsequent intimate fellowship.
Okay, that's Luke's Noah. How does Matthew use the same story?
Matthew 24 also references Noah, but the context is different. It comes after the description of the Great Tribulation, trumpets. Matthew's focus is on the judgment aspect. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. As the flood came and took them all away unexpectedly, so will the final return be a sudden judgment on the wicked.
So Matthew uses Noah not for the escape into the ark, but for the floodwaters of judgment sweeping away the unprepared at the very end.
Exactly. It's the judgment typology repeated right at the conclusion of the 14th year, coinciding with that final, public, Jewish wedding celebration that happens on earth after the Lord returns, and the simultaneous final destruction of his enemies. Feet down return, worldwide judgment.
So we have the dual focus again. Luke uses Noah for the pre-trib escape before the wedding. Matthew uses Noah for the post-trib judgment after the tribulation, coinciding with the final wedding.
It perfectly mirrors the two ends of the 14-year framework. Luke gives the instructions for getting ready to escape. Matthew gives the instructions for enduring until the final judgment falls. Seeing Noah through both lenses reinforces the whole structure.
These details really do seem to click into place once you have that overarching framework of the three Gospels for three groups and three times. It avoids trying to force one single interpretation onto everything.
It allows each detail, even seemingly contradictory ones like the Noah accounts, to have its proper place and meaning within the larger narrative flow. The complexity resolves into a kind of elegant simplicity. Hashtag outro.
This has been quite the journey through a really dense prophetic system, but hopefully laying it out this way helps make it more manageable. Let's just quickly recap the core framework we've built today.
Absolutely. We started with the idea that the end-time tribulation isn't just 7 years, but 14, split into 7 years of seals.
For the sleeping church, the house of Israel, covered by Mark's gospel, leading to a mid-trib rapture.
Right. Followed by 7 years of trumpets.
For the house of Judah, covered by Matthew's gospel, leading to endurance until the final post-trib return.
And preceding all that, you have the 50-day above period, covered by Luke's gospel, involving the bride's escape, the wedding, and the 40-day warning return.
So the timeline and the groups are defined by the prophetic order of the gospels: Luke, then Mark, then Matthew.
Then we anchored this timeline geographically around the Temple Mount, using the 3 post-wedding comings of Christ, aligned with tribes and directions.
South. The first coming, the 40-day warning, linked to Reuben, the man-water symbol.
The second coming, the mid-trib great multitude rapture, linked to Ephraim, the ox-priest king symbol.
The third and final coming, feet down on the Mount of Olives, linked to Judah, the lion warrior symbol.
And finally, the north. Not a redemptive coming, but representing judgment and the origin of opposition. But also, crucially, the banner of Dan, the judge.
Under which the 144,000 serve as the new, unnumbered priestly line during the trumpet judgments, explaining Dan's omission from the sealed list.
Putting it all together gives you, as you said, a unified end-time eye. A way to hopefully see how all these different scriptures and prophecies might fit into one single cohesive narrative, resolving centuries of debate.
It shifts the focus, doesn't it? From just arguing about one to understanding who and what preparation is needed for each potential path.
Exactly. The takeaway isn't just knowing the map. It's figuring out your own readiness based on that map. Which group are you aiming for? What does that require?
Which leads us to that final thought stemming from the north, from Dan and the 144,000.
Right. If this framework is accurate, and the 144,000 are specifically chosen during the tribulation to be the new judges, the new priestly standard bearers for the kingdom, chosen based on their proven faithfulness, their integrity, their ability to withstand corruption under pressure.
Implying a very high standard.
A very high standard, selected during the toughest times. So the provocative question isn't just about seeking escape, which is the Lucian bride mandate. It's about service.
What kind of preparation is needed now if one aspires not just to be saved or escape, but to be found worthy of that level of trust, that level of responsibility, judicial and priestly service in the age to come?
What qualities does that require developing today? What level of diligence, purity, and intimate knowledge of God's ways are needed to potentially be part of that unnumbered judging tribe under the banner of Dan? It moves beyond simple survival.
It certainly does. It frames preparation in a much more active, service-oriented way. A challenging thought to leave you with as you consider this framework.
Indeed. Food for thought, definitely.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope this brought some clarity to a complex topic.
Always a pleasure. Until next time.
Upon the hills where the stories twine, Jerusalem stands a jewel in time. Her stones tell tales of faith and strife. In her embrace one finds new life. All the tribes of Israel, who they are, it's hard to tell. In every land across the sea, your best friend he may be, or the reflection in your well, are all the tribes of Israel. With open arms she welcomes the lost. In Jerusalem's light we count on the cost. With fishers' boats bobbing at the bay, time stands still where spirits sway. The echoes of laughter fill the air, with ancient stones that speak of old, secrets of time in whispers told. All the tribes of Israel, who they are, it's hard to tell. Every lamp across the sea, your best friend he may be, or the reflection in your well, all the tribes of Israel. Each summit reach brings a different view, a canvas painted in every hue. In the desert's arms where silence reigns, life emerges breaking chains. Cacti bloom with flowers bright, a testament to strength, a lovely sight. All the tribes of Israel, who they are, it's hard to tell. In every land across the sea, your best friend he may be, or the reflection in your well, all the tribes of Israel. token of peace. In every leaf, conflict cease. Storms and trials, steadfast it goes. A symbol of hope the heart bestows. Roots deep in the earth, it stands tall, binding us together, answering the call. From branch to table, its fruits we share. In unity found, a world laid bare. All the tribes of Israel, who they are, it's hard to tell. In every land across the sea, your best friend he may be, or in the reflection of your well, are all the tribes of Israel.